Welcome to The Professor and the Princess. We are your hosts, Aunrée.
Thank you, Randy.
And myself, Randy. Our podcast is really about what it means to be human in a world that never stops changing. Whether it's culture or tech or identity, emotion, we'd like to dig into how we love, how we struggle, how we grow, and how we stay grounded amidst all the noise. So join us as we decode cultural change. Today, we're going to talk about cross-cultural friendship, using ourselves
Really?
as the case study, if you will.
How about that?
And I think, for me, I would like to start by saying that was it 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, whenever it was we first met on Zoom.
We did when I interviewed for the job. Yeah.
You were interviewing to be my boss. So I was interviewing you to be my boss.
And it's on there.
And it was like an immediate connection, even on the Zoom. I was like, I know him. And I did not, but I felt like I had already met you.
Yeah.
And we were just like fast friends. And then you got the job, obviously.
Thank you, Randy.
No, don't thank me. And it was just one of those things. And so I've always been fascinated, and I think we've talked about this so much, how on the surface we couldn't be any more different. And we've both noticed when we're out together in public, people are looking at us for
Always.
sure.
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? Are they together? Are they friends? What's the
Exactly. What's
the
happening?
tea?
Exactly.
As the kids say.
Is that her sugar daddy?
Yeah, right. I wish. But you know what I'm saying? And to me, it's just you.
Right.
I don't see you as black. I don't see you as, of course I see you as a male, but not I don't see you as what your sexual orientations. I see you as you. And
sometimes I'm female. I throw my hair back. You know what I mean? But that's as far
hence
as I
the
go.
princess moniker.
Hello.
Right.
Hello.
And you are a princess in the best of ways.
Yes.
But you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I think most people, I'm trying not to generalize, but most people of our generation particularly, I think the younger ones do it a little better, are very isolated in these boxes of, I'm going to surround myself with people like me because it's comfortable. I know it. I understand it. It makes sense to me. And I think that's such a missed opportunity. We were talking about this in the car on the way to the studio today about how I didn't really have an opportunity to have friendships with people who were significantly different than me until I got out of college. Because I went to an all-white high school and, younger school. And when I went to college, I went to a very diverse college, but it was very self-segregated. The black folks wanted nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And they were in their own, sororities, fraternities. And there was really not much opportunity other than maybe in a class here and there to even talk to someone who was different. So when I started working in corporate America for a media company, I was immediately thrown into this pool of diversity. And that's when my education about all of this really began.
Right.
And it's been one of the most important, richest, most... I can't think of the right word because it's more than important. It's been one of the most influential things that has happened to me in my life that has opened me up to this idea that it is not just important, but it's critical for everyone to push themselves to have a friend or two or 100 that are different than them. Because it's not just about kumbaya and let's all be friends and why can't we all get along. It's so much deeper than that. It's this understanding and deep dive into what that person's human experience has been, is, will be, and how you can, together, you can learn from each other and you can grow. Right?
You're hitting so many great points, and I'm like burning with good stuff. See, that's why you're a professor, right? I'm burning with good stuff, and I only say that because you're bringing up some things that I didn't really think about, because I never really thought. The thing is that I think that so much is projected onto us when it comes down to cross-cultural friendships, right? The resistance piece is something I didn't think about until you brought it up when we were in pre-production, and understanding how much is baked into that experience. And I think about like I grew up in a very Black community. So you're talking about the whole idea of being homogenized in that way. And it was fabulous, right? That's important just for grounding. And whiteness was actually the enemy in so many ways, right? I didn't really integrate with white folks until I got to college, because I went to a predominantly white school a few miles from where you went to school at Oswego, right? Which was probably more white than anything, and also openly racist in so many ways. People were. And because I wasn't prepared for that, I just dealt with racism and discrimination like I had homophobia growing up in Harlem, right? So I was already had the skill, I guess, you know, it was honed a little bit for me to be in an environment where I was rejected. I was pretty radical about it, because when racist, discriminatory moments happened, I leaned into them with creativity. So I like wrote a play about a racist experience that I had, and the theater department backed it and put it on the main stage. So that was my way of being rebellious in the, you know, process. But then take it to another level. When I graduated and started working for HBO and other companies, I've always had a best girlfriend, right? And my best girlfriends have always been white. So it's a thing, right? That's what kind of happens in the process. What I realized is that I did like the fact that people would turn their heads that this Black guy and this white woman are together, whatever, right? Not knowing that I'm homosexual, whatever the case may be, or being homosexual and still sleeping with that white woman, which I didn't do, but it's juicy. So I like talking about it that way, right? But also, I think the thing that's beautiful about it is that whiteness comes with a level of privilege. People like to say, I don't really care for that so much, but it definitely comes with a power. And because I'm a Black person who enjoys power and making impact. When I think about power, it's making impact, being able to do the things you want to do. You got to marry the two. It's like you got to have the money to do the thing, right? So whiteness sometimes can be the money, right? And I got the thing. So we come together and we do things. So when I think of things like that, it's like I go to Bergdorf Goodman and have, you know, lunch, right? And think nothing of it. I'm there having my lunch pinky up, and that's just Henri. I'm not trying to make white people feel uncomfortable, whatever. One day I'm with my uncle and I'm like, he's like, I need to go to the restroom. We're near Bergdorf. I go there often. I'm like, let's go up. You go to the bathroom and then we'll have a glass of champagne. And he's like, oh no, I can't go in Bergdorf. Like, no. And I'm like, because you're Black? No, right? Let's get to it. But the connection that I had of having a friend who was living in this space of privilege, who was a white female, being able to do the things and being exposed to the things that actually I wanted to do, right, gave me a level of comfort. So I think that's the beauty of what happens when we come together, is that we marry the things that we have and that we want, bring them together, and, you know, can have really great experiences. That was so long.
No,
but that, you know what I mean?
I completely agree. And I think if you try to break it down a bit, because what you're talking about is kind of navigating the world.
Yes, which is huge.
To tell you the truth, I don't know how comfortable I would be walking into Bergdorf's to go to the bathroom, because that's more of a prestige thing or a wealth thing. But I understand your point. And as I said to you many times, because of my friendships and relationships with people who are of different races, and particularly with Black folks, because it's the most physically obvious, right? I could have an Hispanic friend who looks like me, right?
Right.
But where it's very clear that we are different races, I have witnessed more than 10 or 15 times the abject racism that still burns in our society. And I'm not talking about Oklahoma. I'm talking about New York City. Right. So my kind of rationale, forgetting about the fact that I enjoy your company and I care for you as a human and we have a great time together, I also think it is the only way to get past what I believe is this ignorance versus, I don't want to use, I mean, it is racism, but it's based on in ignorance, right?
It's the heart of it, yeah.
The way to get past it is to really get to know somebody on a deeper level that is different than you, because then it gives you that bird's eye view to come to that obvious conclusion: we're all the same. Our cultures have all the same neuroses, mishugas, you know, things with the mothers and, you know, all the things, right?
Yeah.
You and I talk about shared experiences, and we couldn't come from a less similar background. And yet I'll say something about my childhood. Oh yeah. You know, like, there's a connection that is not being connected. So that to me is the meat of it. Is it's great to to have friendships for the sake of those friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not suggesting that all of my diverse friends are my friends just as a social experiment.
Right.
It's to say that it has enhanced my understanding of the world and has made me a better human.
Right. Because people exist, right? People of different cultures and races exist. So that's one of the reasons why. Because I think that one thing people get caught up with is a great question, I think, is that what's the value of knowing people from different backgrounds and different races? Like, what is that value to me as an individual, right? And that's the reason why I go to that place of power, because I think that everyone is hungry for a level of being seen. Now, being seen and power is two different things,
Right.
but there's power in it, right? Is that when you're seen, you feel alive. You feel that you're part of something bigger, right? So when we stay like in our boxes, in our circles, that's where it becomes problematic because the world is so much bigger. I think you worded it best when you said you learn so much about other folks and it expands, what you know about the world and how to move through the world, and that you know the value of bringing those things in when it comes down to like business and just in your life, right? How it enriches your life in such a big way.
And it makes you a better person.
Right. Talk
really
more about that,
believe that.
Randy. What does that even mean to you about making you a better person?
Because as a person who is empathetic to begin with, right? I feel empathy for others. Having the deep connected relationships that I have with a multitude of different types of people from different worlds and different cultures, races, sexual orientations, all that good stuff, I can feel more connected when they're hurting than I would if I was just living in my own little white bubble. Like many of my friends who are all lovely people, but they have never felt that interest, desire, or feeling to expand their world. When things go wrong in the world, I feel I want to show up for my friends. I want to be there. I want to support them, be their ally, be their friend, and just be a support system to know that I have their back.
But also we miss out, right? I'm going to add on to what you said because I think that's so rich. We miss out on some really amazing relationships when we don't open ourselves up to folks who don't look like us, right?
Right.
This is going to probably be a little bit controversial, but I say to folks all the time, I have family members and they're Black folks who are just wouldn't be friends with them. I'm not forcing myself to be friends with them because we just don't connect.
Right,
We don't have the
exactly.
same values.
Right.
Whereas, and not saying that there's a comparison, but then I have white friends and Hispanic friends and who we connect because we share some of the same values. So why should I rob myself of not having those rich connections? Because we're hardwired for connection. I mean, it's throughout psychology, the learnings, right? We're hardwired for those connections. Why miss out on the opportunity to connect to someone who is fabulous, who might not be Black or might not be gay or might not be, right? I just don't feel like it's smart to stay in a bubble because you're just not allowing yourself to expand.
Yes. And I think that's not only is it a missed opportunity, but it's a loss to humanity. Because I always, I'll give you an example, and this is horrible, but it's a great example. My dad grew up in a very different time.
Yeah.
I think he was a racist.
Okay.
I do. He would say things about people who were not white. Okay. He grew up in a very rough neighborhood, gangs and fighting, and, it was no question. As I got older and I had a much bigger, diverse group of friends, I would have parties at my house. And let's say 25% of the people would be Black. And my mom would be like, "Where's your father?" I'm like, "With my Black friends." And he would spend the whole day with them. And I'd hear him laughing.
Yeah.
And they were, cackling and they were hugging him. And they were just shooting the breeze, talking about the old neighborhood. And after everybody would leave, I'm like, "Dad, how was the party?" He's like, "I had a great time." It was like he wasn't, when he got down to it,
Right.
he's like, "They're so fun." I'm like, yeah.
The exposure, right? But you being
The
that,
exposure.
you bringing that to the table.
The exposure.
That's the beauty of what we do too in the friendships.
Right. But that to me is an example of conditioning to believe one thing,
Yeah.
having the exposure and going, "You know what? I am wrong."
Yeah. I guess I was trying to prove a point too, because when I say that, I was trying to prove a point with having white friends, because when I went to Oswego, that's when the conversations about racism and discrimination and whiteness, well, maybe not whiteness because we weren't using that language then, of white folks and black folks came up with like my granddad, who was a man of few words. I think I probably have said this on other episodes when we talked about race, about him driving me to Walmart to get the things for, my goodies and all that stuff for college. And I'm like, what do you think about, because Oswego is a pretty beautiful, well, the campus anyways, beautiful campus. And he's like, grandson, I'm just looking at these trees, wondering which one you could be hanging from, right?
Oh my God,
now,
that's awful.
That moment could have warped my thinking, right? And I'm like, I can't stay here because white people are going to hang me in the college. My undergrad they were some of the best years of my life. I was able to create a brand. I was able to go through discrimination and racism, right? And do something rebellious and, what's our word here? Resistant, to create that resistance, right? I was able to do that with that experience, right? And then also leaning to what works for me and understanding that. However, so many people are conditioned and they're influenced by what our people tell us because that's a safe space. So because you're older, you know better.
Right.
So I need to follow that same creed. But I think that's the case across the board, is that people are taking information that they're getting from their older folks or from the news and from the world in so many ways, and saying this is who I am rather than becoming who they actually are.
Right. So in essence, what you're saying is we have to change the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
We have to change that historical narrative of negativity on both sides toward the other, and the other as being bad because it's not like me.
Right.
No matter what that other is. Right.
Yeah, and the other is still bad, right? I tell people all the time, like, I don't believe in the whole thing of like rewriting the narrative or reinventing the language, because the shit is real. It is what it is, right? And the reason why we have to continue the narrative and write it differently, right, is because we know better. Right. I think it was Maya Angelou who said that when you know better, you do better. So it's that whole idea of leaning into making sure that we're like changing the narrative as we move forward, because there's some value. There's value there. And because so much of the world is still separate and negative and racist and, is that we get to kind of give people a different perspective. I think perspective is power. It can be very powerful if it's used in the right way. Give them a different perspective.
Yes.
Right? So if, people who are leaning into listening to us have conversations about how we got to this place and the fact that we're not just friends and la la la, that we were like running down the street holding hands. It's like we also know the value of our friendship beyond our sex, beyond our race.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think you kind of hit on this before when you talked about shared values.
Yeah.
Because to me, when I look for relationships with other humans, that's the first thing. It's not what do you look like, how much money do you have a beach house I can stay at? Although it's a nice perk.
I was going to say, perk. Randy, I'm like taking that too.
But what I look for is the shared values, right?
Yeah.
And do we have the things that matter to me are also things that matter to you. Mm-hmm. The way in which I show up in the world is similar. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where our connection started. And that's where most of my connections with what I would call my post, college friends, most of those relationships started from a shared value system where we can really elevate one another and help one another to pursue dreams or to be the best version of ourselves that we want to be.
You knock it out the park. And I want to make sure that although we're talking about cross-cultural friendships as resistance, how it shows up in something that most people are probably reacting to, because I think that just listening to what we're talking about right now, yes, it is important in kind of the work that we do. I mean, the work that we do, the friendship that we have, right? And it doesn't take work because it's pretty effortless. I think when it comes down to like systemic racism and in places that really impact people, dollars, because I'm talking about power, and that's a very elitist, classist way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I've owned that that's a part of who I am as a person, just from childhood, because there's classism and elitism in the Black community as well. So I had the option to choose. But when it comes down to corporations, systemic racism, having a relationship across cultural friendships in corporate for myself has been very powerful in breaking down systemic. My old boss, Barbara, and I can talk about it because she's so amazing. white woman, true, like when you see her, quintessential, blonde hair, blue eyes, Upper East Side, she's at, right? When you sit down and have a conversation with Barbara, because she's so real. And I mean, she told me in areas that I was not exercising diversity, equity, and inclusion as a Black gay man. She's like, what about the women? Like, you're taking the spotlight for yourself, because sometimes that spotlight narcissism thing can kind of show up. But what ended up happening with us being friends, we could have real conversations where she's saying the team is diverse, but what about the equity? Like leaning into, but I don't think if we didn't have that friendship and that closeness that we have, we would not have been able to have those conversations to break down those systemic blocks.
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of shows up across the board. The friendship as resistance actually leaned into that. You know, I think that's something that can be very valuable to folks too.
Yeah.
Does that matter?
No, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
You had mentioned that there was something you wanted to share from a website. I think it's
God. Yes. Oh my God. It's wethrivetogether.org. And they have a really great website. Check them out. But this is one thing that stood out to me as we were doing the research. They have a quote here, or just some information from the site that says, cultural differences can influence friendships in many ways. By understanding and respecting these differences, you can build stronger, more meaningful relationships. Be open-minded, communicate clearly, and show respect for your friends' culture, what we just talked about, right? They go on to say, engage in activities that help you learn about each other's backgrounds and celebrate your cultural diversity, which we talk about. We do that so much.
Yep.
I had a great time last night at you guys' house. And remember that everyone has unique cultural experiences to share, and embracing these differences can lead to enriching and lasting friendships, which you and I will be friends forever, right? So it's beyond the Zoom call that we have.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of what we've built and what we continue to build. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, for Christ's sake.
Right. WeThriveTogether.org.
Yes.
Love that.
So good. Okay, good.
And I should have mentioned, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I think my being Jewish does play a part in it.
Really?
Well, understanding what it feels like to be persecuted makes me that much more supportive and empathetic to the Black community. And I remember I had a friend, Maury, from Showtime many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. He would say, you're still white. So when you walk into a room, you're just a white lady. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, until they find out that I'm Jewish.
Wow.
And then the KKK is coming for me too.
Oh,
and we would laugh about it, right?
Wow.
But it wasn't funny, but we tried to make light of it. But the point is that maybe that's part of the reason why this has been such an important part of my life. Because I understand that feeling of being the other, being, outside of the norm, walking around during Christmas time going, oh boy, like, not that I don't think it's pretty and everything, but you definitely feel like you're not included, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's just something to add at this moment, because I think it may give a little bit of context.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's something, sometimes I think about it and think about that experience too of, is it worse for people to see you and see your skin color and immediately they are who they are?
Yeah.
Versus inviting you to the table.
Yep.
And then they say at the table, oh, we don't like Jewish people. You're like, oh, wait, this is not the right table for me. Let me go.
Oh, I've had many of those experiences where they say it right to my face. And I let them say it all. And then after they're all done, I go, did you know that I was Jewish? And they were like, well, I didn't mean it like that. And I was like,
what did you mean it like?
What did you mean it? I'm just so
else
clear.
Could you mean it? Exactly. But that's what we can do, right? As being closer and having these friendships, right? That also when we're in groups of people who may look like us or be the same culture or race, religion, etc., that when folks start talking about folks who are not like us, that we can also defend each other because we have our values, right?
Yes.
And we know the connection and deeper, and we know each other on a human, that's how we change the world. I think last season we were talking about the whole idea of flipping stereotypes.
Yeah.
Well, we would attack them. And now what we're doing, what's our line now?
Decoding
cultural
change.
Listen. Okay, good. That's great.
I love that.
So good.
We could go on and on.
Yeah,
But
right. So we're gonna stop here because maybe it's gonna be
to.
episode 5, right? Insane. So we love you guys so much for leaning in, and hopefully something from this conversation will resonate. I'm sure it will. There's so much impact in here. So what we're gonna say, just wrapping up. Remember, it's less about having the answers and more about asking the questions.
Yes.
And sometimes we say the right questions, but it's just the questions, right?
Just asking the questions. Yes.
So until next time, keep watching the world with open eyes.
Exactly.
So much to see.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, guys.